Laws are supposed to protect people. They're meant to bring order, logic, and justice to society, but sometimes laws do the opposite. Sometimes they reveal fear instead of wisdom. Sometimes they expose paranoia, control, or pure absurdity. And sometimes they are so surreal that it's hard to believe they were ever real, yet they were enforced, punished, and defended in court. In the history of the United States of America, a country built on liberty, reason, and constitutional order, lawmakers have passed rules that sound more like dark comedy than governance. This is not a list. This is a journey through the moments when power lost perspective. These are the most absurd and surreal laws ever written in American history, and what they tell us about fear, control, and the human need to regulate the unregulatable. When clothing became a crime, in the early history of the United States, morality wasn't just a social expectation. It was a legal battlefield. What people wore or didn't wear was considered a threat to public order. In several states and cities during the 19th and early 20th centuries, it was illegal to wear clothing of the wrong gender. These laws weren't about safety. They were about control. Police could arrest anyone whose appearance didn't match what lawmakers believed was proper. There were no clear definitions, no objective standards, just suspicion. A hat too masculine, a coat too feminine, and suddenly you were a criminal. These laws weren't enforced equally. They were tools used selectively, often against marginalized communities. The absurdity wasn't just the rule itself, but the power it gave authorities to define identity by decree. The law didn't ask who you were. It told you who you were allowed to be. The war against dancing, joy, and fun. At various points in American history, dancing itself became suspicious. In some towns, it was illegal to dance without a permit. In others, certain dances were banned entirely, especially those considered too wild, too foreign, or too sexual. During the early 20th century, moral panic reached a level where lawmakers believed rhythm could corrupt society. Jazz clubs, swing halls, and public dances were regulated like dangerous substances. Imagine being arrested not for violence, theft, or fraud, but for moving your body in a way that made lawmakers uncomfortable. The real fear wasn't the dance. Dancing meant mixing classes, mixing races, breaking social barriers. And for authorities obsessed with order, joy was dangerous. When eating became a legal statement, food laws are meant to protect health. But sometimes they went much further. In certain periods, laws dictated what you could eat, when you could eat it, and how it could be served, not for safety, but for symbolism. In some states, it was illegal to serve ice cream with certain desserts. In others, eating specific foods in public places was restricted because it was considered uncivilized. These laws often targeted immigrants. New foods brought from abroad weren't just unfamiliar. They were seen as cultural threats. By regulating food, lawmakers attempted to regulate identity. What you ate became evidence of whether you belonged. Laws against being poor. One of the most disturbing categories of absurd laws were those that criminalized poverty itself. Vagrancy laws made it illegal to be unemployed. Loitering laws made it illegal to exist in public without a clear purpose. Anti-begging laws punished asking for help. In practice, this meant that being poor was treated as a crime, not because of what someone did, but because of what they lacked. No job? Suspicious. No home? Criminal? No money? Guilty. These laws were often written vaguely on purpose, allowing police to decide who looked like a problem. The absurdity lies in the logic. Instead of solving poverty, the law tried to arrest it out of existence. When silence and words were regulated at various times, laws in the United States restricted what people could say, or even how loudly they could say it. Swearing in public was illegal in many cities. Singing certain songs could get you fined. Speaking out against authorities during wartime could lead to prison. During moments of national fear, wars, protests, social upheaval, free speech shrank dramatically. Words became dangerous not because they caused harm, but because they challenged power. The surreal part is how quickly liberty vanished under the excuse of order. The obsession with moral purity. In some states, it was illegal to sell certain books, show certain images, or teach certain ideas, not because they were false, but because they were considered immoral. Comics were blamed for juvenile crime. Novels were accused of corrupting women. Education itself became suspicious when it challenged tradition. Laws tried to freeze culture in place. But culture doesn't freeze. It breaks the mold, and the law always arrives too late. When animals and objects became legal targets incredibly, there were laws that punished animals for human behavior. Pigs, horses, and even insects were fined, imprisoned, or executed for violating local rules. Not metaphorically, literally. Objects too became criminals, throwing snowballs, carrying ice cream, playing games on Sundays. Each of these actions was once treated as a threat to social order. The law didn't just govern people. It tried to govern reality itself. Why these laws existed at all? It's easy to laugh at these laws now. But they weren't jokes when they were enforced. They were born from fear of change, moral panic, economic anxiety, loss of control, political opportunism. Absurd laws often appear when societies feel unstable. When the future feels threatening, lawmakers reach for control, even if that control makes no sense. The more irrational the fear, the more irrational the law. The strangest thing about absurd laws isn't that they existed. It's that they were taken seriously. They were written, passed, enforced, defended, and one day, quietly, they disappeared. Not because lawmakers admitted they were ridiculous, but because society moved forward and left them behind. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How many laws today will future generations look at and say? Because history teaches us one brutal truth. Power doesn't always sound intelligent when it speaks. Sometimes it just sounds afraid. And fear has always been one of the most powerful lawmakers in history.